Welcome to Science and Technology Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Keir Starmer risks hard-won Labour unity to show he can lead UK. SpaceX Starship is step closer to launch after FAA safety review. US cybersecurity advisor stresses know your customer rules for AI. Computer got it wrong, Robert was locked up by AI for a crime he didn't commit. Australia's top 3 inflation drivers are beyond RBA's control. Keir Starmer risks hard-won Labour unity to show he can lead UK. Bloomberg. UK Labour leader Keir Starmer has rejected calls from within his party to push for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Starmer called for humanitarian pauses instead, arguing that a full ceasefire would allow Hamas to continue attacking Israel. The move aligns Starmer with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and US President Joe Biden. However, discontent within Labour is growing, with local councillors quitting the party in Glasgow, Manchester, and Oxford, and the mayors of London and Manchester publicly breaking from Starmer's line. SpaceX Starship is step closer to launch after FAA safety review. Bloomberg. SpaceX's Starship rocket has completed a safety review by the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, bringing it one step closer to obtaining a license for a second launch. The FAA focused on potential impacts to public health and property. The agency is also conducting an environmental review of Starship with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which has up to 135 days to assess the impact of the rocket and its launches on the local environment. U.S. cybersecurity advisor stresses know your customer rules for AI. Nikkei Asia. The White House has said that as part of its new executive order on artificial intelligence, AI, companies involved in advanced AI must verify the customers they deal with. The move is aimed at addressing the risk of malicious use of AI by countries that pose security threats. The executive order also requires AI developers to share safety testing results with the government before new services are rolled out to the public. The order is the U.S.'s first legally binding regulation on AI systems and comes amid growing concerns about the potential misuse of the technology, including the spread of misinformation by countries like China and Russia. The U.S. hopes that the order will encourage other countries to adopt their own regulations on AI. Computer got it wrong, Robert was locked up by AI for a crime he didn't commit. ABC. Robert Williams, an African-American man from Detroit, was wrongfully arrested in 2020 due to a faulty artificial intelligence (AI) facial recognition system. This incident raised concerns about the racial bias and potential misuse of facial recognition technology. The AI system used in his case was trained on a database of mostly white people, leading to its inaccurate identification of people of color. This issue of racial bias is not limited to the US, as similar technology is being used in Australia. Facial recognition technology has been widely adopted by law enforcement agencies around the world for its potential to identify criminals. However, the technology is not perfect and has been found to be significantly more likely to falsely identify people of color. In Mr. Williams' case, the facial recognition system wrongly identified him as the suspect in a robbery based on security tape footage. Despite his innocence, he was arrested and had to fight to clear his name. The use of facial recognition technology by law enforcement is a polarizing issue, with critics arguing that it infringes on privacy rights and disproportionately targets people of color. In Australia, the use of facial recognition technology is widespread, but there are no specific regulations governing its use. This lack of regulation raises concerns about the potential for wrongful arrests and racial bias in the Australian criminal justice system. Mr. Williams is now advocating for a ban on the use of facial recognition by law enforcement. He acknowledges that fixing the bias problem may be possible through training systems on larger and more diverse datasets. However, he still opposes the use of facial recognition for mass surveillance, as it infringes on people's privacy and freedom. Australia's top 3 inflation drivers are beyond RBA's control. Bloomberg. Australian inflation is being driven by factors such as climate change, geopolitical shocks, and government policies, which are beyond the control of the Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, according to economists. However, the RBA is expected to respond with monetary tightening, including a rate hike, as early as next week. Rising home prices, rents, gasoline, and insurance costs were the top drivers of consumer prices in the last quarter. Economists believe that these factors will fade over time without further help from the RBA, and some expect the central bank to pause at its current rate of 4.1% at its upcoming meeting on November 7. U.S. Supreme Court's social media clash evokes Trump's use of Twitter. Bloomberg. The U.S. Supreme Court is considering whether public officials can be sued for restricting access to their social media feeds, a case that has similarities to former President Donald Trump's efforts to block people from his Twitter account. The court is examining how the First Amendment's free speech protections apply when government officials use their private accounts to discuss public business. The outcome of the case will impact the rights of government officials at all levels and determine how much access citizens have to officials who use private accounts to communicate with the public. Update 1: AMD forecasts fourth quarter revenue below estimates. Yahoo! Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, has forecasted its fourth quarter revenue to be less than expectations. The company has cited a weak gaming market, a decline in demand from some industries for its programmable chips, and a decline in demand from the healthcare and automotive industries. This comes after Intel said it expects demand from that segment to decline and stay down for the next few quarters. Analysts have also said the recent expansion of U.S. sanctions on chip exports to Beijing will require AMD to seek licenses to sell its most high-end artificial intelligence chips to China. AMD's shares fell 3% after the news. Tesla wins suit that blamed its software for deadly crash. New York Times. A jury in California has ruled that Tesla is not at fault for a fatal crash involving its autopilot system. The decision, in a state court in Riverside, is the first verdict relating to a fatal crash in which victims' lawyers blamed Tesla's driver assistance software. The ruling could affect other similar cases that are pending across the U.S., as well as consumer perception of Tesla's vehicles, which account for half of electric car sales in the country. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has been accused of overstating the capabilities of the autopilot system. That's all for today's news. Let's recap the key stories. UK Labour leader Keir Starmer is risking unity within his party by rejecting calls for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. This move aligns him with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and US President Joe Biden, but it has led to discontent within Labour. SpaceX's Starship rocket has completed a safety review by the US Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, bringing it closer to obtaining a license for a second launch. The FAA is also conducting an environmental review of Starship. The White House has issued a new executive order on artificial intelligence, AI, requiring companies to verify their customers and share safety testing results with the government. The aim is to address the risk of malicious use of AI by countries that pose security threats. A case in the U.S. Supreme Court is examining whether public officials can be sued for restricting access to their social media feeds. This case has similarities to former President Donald Trump's efforts to block people from his Twitter account. Advanced Micro Devices, AMD, has forecasted lower than expected revenue for the fourth quarter, citing a weak gaming market and declining demand from certain industries. This comes after Intel also forecasted a decline in demand from the healthcare and automotive industries. Tesla has won a lawsuit in California that blamed its software for a deadly crash. This ruling could have implications for other similar cases and consumer perception of Tesla's vehicles. Now, let's dive into some analysis. Keir Starmer's decision to reject calls for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict is a risky move, as it is causing discontent within his own party. While aligning himself with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and US President Joe Biden may help to establish Starmer as a strong leader, he risks losing support from party members who believe in a more peaceful approach. It will be interesting to see how this plays out within Labour and whether Starmer's stance will have any impact on the situation in Israel and Palestine. SpaceX's Starship rocket completing a safety review is a significant step forward for the company. Obtaining a license for a second launch brings them closer to achieving their goal of interplanetary travel. The environmental review will also be crucial in ensuring that the rocket's impact on the local environment is thoroughly assessed. This is a positive development for the future of space exploration. The new executive order on AI in the US is a step towards regulating the use of this technology. By requiring companies to verify their customers and share safety testing results with the government, the order aims to address the potential misuse of AI for malicious purposes. It is encouraging to see the US taking a proactive approach to AI regulation and setting an example for other countries to follow. The case in the US Supreme Court regarding public officials and their social media feeds raises important questions about free speech and access to government officials. It will be interesting to see how the court rules and what impact it will have on the relationship between public officials and the public. This case also serves as a reminder of the power and influence of social media in today's society. AMD's forecast of lower than expected revenue for the fourth quarter is a result of various factors, including a weak gaming market and declining demand from certain industries. This is in line with Intel's recent forecast of a decline in demand from the healthcare and automotive industries. It will be important for AMD to navigate these challenges and seek opportunities in other areas to maintain its growth. Tesla winning the lawsuit blaming its software for a fatal crash is a significant victory for the company. This ruling not only clears Tesla of responsibility for the crash but also protects its reputation and the perception of its vehicles. It will be interesting to see how this verdict impacts other pending cases and whether it leads to any changes in Tesla's approach to its autopilot system. That's all for today's news analysis. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you make of Keir Starmer's decision on the Israel-Hamas conflict? Do you think the U.S. executive order on AI will be effective in addressing the potential misuse of the technology? And what are your thoughts on the use of facial recognition technology by law enforcement? I look forward to hearing your ideas and answering your questions. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.